Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our 72nd webinar. Wow, that's a lot of webinars. I'm here with Chad. Chad, welcome.
Hey, Byron, thanks. Glad to be here.
It's always a pleasure to be chatting with you, especially when it's on an informational webinar like this. Chad, you are the co-founder of Relevance, and we're going to be introducing you in a little bit, and you have some pretty interesting insights and savvy that I'm super excited to hear about today that are just going to change our world as we know it with regards to native advertising and some really creative tactics on promoting your content. Let me first go through a couple of logistic issues before we chime in. The number one question I get always, perpetually, even throughout the webinar is this webinar being recorded? And the answer is definitely yes. Everyone that is listening in and tuned in today will receive a link to the recording, and you'll get that probably tomorrow, maybe later today. Kelly is phenomenal, and we'll get that out to everyone. And we greatly appreciate all her work in helping us get organized. We're going to feature some Q&A at the end of Chad's presentation today, and I'll moderate that, and I'll look for everyone to fire questions throughout the presentation that I can circle back to. If I get I'll have a list of questions, and I may ask you a question about your question using the question format, but I may answer some of your questions as well as Chad is speaking, so I'll be interactive throughout the presentation. So feel free to fire off any questions you may have throughout the presentation or thoughts along the way, and I'll try to communicate with you accordingly. Please give us a shout out at Writer Access on Twitter and join the conversation and look for it with a hashtag #WriteOn. By the way, a famous way that I end all my emails, #WriteOn!! So I thought you might find that interesting, but I think everybody by now should know who I am. I'm the CEO of Writer Access and the chair of Content Marketing Conference, which is coming up in just a few weeks away. Actually, on my birthday this year, Chad, you'll be happy to know. Chad is a speaker as well this year at CMC. We have close to a sold-out event. Our target was 300. We're inches away, so if you're even thinking about going, reserve your slot. It's going to be very exciting this year. I also learned from my pal Tim Ash, who is the chair of Conversion Conference, that he's going to sell out this year as well with 500. And we have a new email marketing summit, which is kind of interesting, that's joining us, and they'll have about 150 attendees. So we'll have close to 1,000 people this year at this triple header conference, and we're really, you can, by the way, you can buy access to all the passes that you can when you go to Content Marketing Conference. You can also pay a very small, ridiculously small additional fee to be able to access all the shows. So really exciting what we're doing there in our second year of CMC. So I'm super excited for everybody to join in. On the Writer Access front, good stuff going on there. We've launched translation services. We actually have our lots of orders that have gone through, much to my pleasant surprise. We hit the ground running quickly. We have some agencies, interestingly enough, using translation services quite a bit right off the bat. And we literally launched like 3 weeks ago. So we have customers. We have over 1,000 translators. That's super exciting. And we're going to be launching content strategists in May, right around the time the show launches. We're just finishing up our beta testing of that whole interface and have a big pool that we're working on building up for content strategists that can help companies with small hourly projects, keyword research, content planning, even management of the workflow at Writer Access. So that's going to be really interesting. Thank you for that shameless self-promotion for Writer Access. Back to Chad, most importantly. Chad will tell you a lot about himself. I've had the pleasure of getting to know him as a result of his very appreciative sponsorship of Content Marketing Conference, a really big anchor for us to bring in this year. And we're super excited that Chad can be with us. He's also going to be speaking, of course, and is truly one of the revolutionaries when it comes to content marketing. He was voted one of the top 100 content marketing thought leaders. He's been in the top 100 Globe ad agencies that know social media. He's a published author of lots of things that he'll talk about. And perhaps most importantly, he's a decorated veteran of the Iraqi freedom and movement and a former Army commander, and he's just an all-around amazing guy. His magazine, digital magazine Relevance, is phenomenal, and he's a great source of information and entertainment, as we will see. I'm just a big fan of Chad's, and we're honored to have him here. So, here's some stuff that we can close out on, but without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Chad. So just give me 1 second. And here we are, bing at a bang. Chad, over to you.
All right, Byron. Well, hey, listen, thank you so much for that introduction. That made me sound a lot cooler than what I think I am. But with that said, yeah, so I'm the VP of Audience and co-founder for Relevance. Our website is relevance.com. Now, if any of you on this webinar can tell me what a VP of Audience does, please let me know, because I'm still trying to figure that out. So today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, and that topic is content promotion. Now, yes, we'll talk a little bit about earned media, but we're mostly going to focus on paid media. And we're going to move up funnel. We're going to talk about native advertising. I believe that native advertising today is just in its infancy. And I think what it will become in the future is going to be one of the primary channels that we as content producers and publishers will rely on to get the visibility that we seek and need to grow our businesses. So with that said, I don't really need to intro myself any further, but I do want to point out my Twitter handle there. I love Twitter. I'm on Twitter constantly. As soon as this webinar's over, I'm going to jump right on Twitter. So if you have any questions, of course, you can ask them in the questions pane, and you can also hit me up directly on Twitter. So definitely, you follow me, I'll follow you back, and we'll connect on Twitter. So, like Byron said, I'm a former military guy, so I adhere to the principles of KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And this agenda is just a reflection of that. So what I'm going to do, we're going to start off, we're going to talk about some problems and some trends that are happening in the content marketing space. It's very important that I dive into these in order to frame my solution to this, okay? And the solution revolves around two things: research and content promotion. And like I said before, we're going to focus mostly on paid media as far as promotion goes. So, I talked about problems and trends. Now let's look at some of them. But before I dive into them, I have to point this out. So this statistic puts a film over this entire presentation. So as you listen to this presentation, as you look at my slides, I need you to always keep in mind that the vast majority of marketers, B2B and B2C, now the latest B2C numbers aren't out yet, so that's why I just have B2B in here, but every year they're very close to each other. The vast majority of us do not believe we're using our content effectively. The vast majority. Folks, this is a lot of failure right here. 7 out of 10 people don't believe they're using their content effectively. That's a lot of failure. And we're investing all this time, energy, effort, and money in doing what? Content marketing. And the majority of us think it's not effective, at least right now. And we're going to talk about why that is. And some of these problems point that out. So let's talk about budgeting. So I want you to jot this down if you can, but definitely remember it. This blows my mind. When it comes to television advertising, for every dollar a marketer spends on content creation, guess how much they're spending on promotion? $5. The ratio is 1 to 5. Do you have any idea what that ratio looks like for content marketers? Do you think it even remotely comes close to this? No. No, not at all. As a matter of fact, it plays out like this. For every 85 cents that we spend on content creation, we're only spending 15 cents on content promotion. That's insane. Completely insane. Essentially what we're doing is, as an industry, is we're listening to those thought leaders that built their brand late last decade or early this decade. We're listening to them, and they're telling us how they did it. And how they did it was the field of dreams. They built it, and they came. They relied on, and still do, those organic channels of content promotion. So they relied on social media, organic social media. They relied on search. You see, most of those thought leaders created their personal brand in an era of content deficits. Okay? So what does that mean? That means that, at least in the marketing field, from all last decade up until around 2012-ish, there was more people out there on the internet seeking solutions to their marketing problems than there was content to answer those questions. Well, today we live in a different world. In fact, most industries live in a completely different world. They live in a content surplus, meaning there is more content on the internet than what's needed to answer all the questions that people are asking. Okay? And that causes some major issues, and we're going to get into those. So, based on the work that I've done with clients over the years, I can tell you that your content promotion budget should be at least 1-to-1. So for every dollar you're spending on creating content, you need to spend another dollar promoting that content. And I recommend a converged promotion strategy. So using owned, earned, and paid media. That's the best way to do it, and the best way to get the most out of your campaigns. So back in 2013, these numbers were actually hard to get. I had to pull from 2 different sources, but I wanted to give you a snapshot of what people were actually spending back then. They're spending more now, but the percentages are about the same today. Okay, about 25% of marketing budgets are spent on content marketing. But this is just in the U.S. If you look at the projections for global spending on content promotion, by 2019, according to PQ Media, we're supposed to be spending $300 billion on content marketing. And think about that for a second. If 7 out of 10 B2B marketers think that their content marketing is not effective, there's definitely more money being invested in it. So I'm here today to help you guys not be one of those 7 in 10 marketers, so that you're one of the 3 in 10. So the takeaway from this, the bottom line, is that we need to spend more on content promotion. And that's not just money and budget either. That's time, energy, and effort and planning. Okay, it's very, very important, content promotion today. So what's the next problem? I mentioned content surpluses. I just want you to take a look at this GIF for one moment. This is how much data is produced on these channels every second of every minute on the internet. And guess what, folks? This GIF is a little old. It's actually about 1.5 years old. So there's actually more data than this today being generated every second. The fact of the matter is that every time we produce content, whether it's an infographic, a video, a tweet, a Facebook post, whatever it is, We are competing against a sea of like content, of similar content, of cat videos and memes. We're all competing for people's attention in this massive sea filled with tons and tons and tons and tons of content. And most of us are relying on the build it and they will come model. We're relying on organic social media for the most part and search. Well, folks, if you're competing with 500 other blogs for the same keyword phrases and you're a relatively new business, or you just started your content marketing campaign within the last year or two, what are the chances of you showing up on the first page of Google against those 499 other blog posts that were written by your competitors? It's not easy. And it's not something that we as business owners and employees and marketers and strategists, it's not necessarily something that we can rely on and grow a business on these days. Okay? Not without really focusing on content promotion. And this is interesting to me as well. Oracle figured out that for B2B content marketers, 76% of them are saying that they're creating more content than what they were a year ago. So this whole storyline of all this content, Mark Schaefer calls it content shock, it's a real thing. You can see it in the numbers. At the end of the day, many industries are just oversaturated with content. Now, if any of you on this webinar happen to be snail farmers, okay, you're probably fine. I bet your industry is not oversaturated with content. You probably can build it and they will come. But for the rest of us in industries like sales or marketing or software, technology, insurance, financial stuff, guess what? Your industry is oversaturated with content already. So yeah, I mentioned Mark Schaefer and his content shock concept. Basically, based on his research, he figured this out, that by 2020 there'll be, and this is a very conservative estimate, by the way, there's going to be 5 times more content on the internet than what there was last year. Content, information. That's a huge number. Huge. And as marketers, we have to deal with this. We have to put our content out there and figure out ways that we can earn the visibility that we need, right? Because with 5x more content than last year, it's going to be incrementally harder than what it is even today. So my question to you is, how does that make you feel? This is one of my favorite gifts. I love to share this GIF. It's kind of a scary thing when you think about it, but you don't have to panic. I've got some solutions to these problems, and that's what we're talking about today. So the other problem is simply waning organic visibility. If you've been in the content marketing space for a while, you clearly know that our ability to show up organically in social media and even search to a certain extent is declining. And it's declining at a rapid pace, especially with social media. And Facebook themselves has turned down the visibility for brands organically. And Twitter announced a year and a half ago they're doing the same thing. They announced like a month ago they're getting ready to do it. I've been told Pinterest is doing it. Instagram just changed to an algorithmic news feed. They're doing it. The fact of the matter is, when it comes to social media, it's a proven business model to allow brands on there, build up an audience, and then take that audience from them. It's turning into a pay-to-play model today. And as a result, I believe that search engines and social media are breaking their promise to us. They promised us several years ago that us as marketers and brands could go on to their platforms and build these audiences. Well, they took them from us. And the fact of the matter is that both have been the main channels of content distribution on the internet. In fact, they were the primary gatekeepers of all the content consumed online: social media and search. And today they primarily still are, but there's other channels that we as marketers and as communication professionals and as PR people that we need to leverage, because search and social has broken their promise to us. I talked about Facebook and their organic reach. Depending on your industry, that 2% may be closer to 0%. I know that their algorithmic newsfeed has crushed meteorologists. So meteorologists used to flourish on Facebook, but it hit them hard. I don't know why Facebook hates meteorologists. It doesn't make sense. But yeah, it depends on your industry. But it's around 2% for most everybody. And of course, as I mentioned before, this is a proven business model. It's no secret that as Facebook's organic visibility declines, their stock price does what? It goes up. They just had a record quarter. And it's not rocket science, folks. It's a proven business model for social media. So let's talk about search. If you look at the trends, the fact of the matter is that year-over-year search query growth is on the decline. While it still is growing, it's not growing like it used to. And I mentioned this before. There are only 10 positions on the first page of Google. 10. It's only 10. In a world with 5 times more content than what we have today, do you think that one of those 10 positions is going to be there for you and your content? Maybe. Depends on your industry. But I can tell you, if you were to start up a new digital marketing agency tomorrow, good luck getting into those 10. 4 years from now, it's going to be way worse. Way worse. So what I'm telling you is, as marketers, we can't rely on this channel to give us everything we need to grow our businesses, to drive revenue. Will it drive some? Of course it will. But it's not like the old days where search and social drove everything to us and it was free. Doesn't work that way these days for most industries. So as a result, I believe that SEO is not something that you do anymore. It's what happens when you do everything else right. So the search algorithm has advanced to a point, to a degree today, where rankings are a trailing indicator of good content marketing and PR. These are things that you would do anyways if the search engines didn't exist. You get those things right, you will show up in the search engines. But it's not just getting it right. It's getting it right and getting it better than your 10 competitors or your 20 competitors or your 500 competitors in the search engine. And it's because of this that I believe search engines aren't built to serve up tomorrow's volume of content. They're not. I mean, think about it. A world of 5x more content than what we have today. Unless Google and the other search engines dramatically change something with their user interface and how they work and how they operate, I don't see how a business can rely on a search engine to deliver them traffic, unless it's a branded search term. They're simply just not built to serve up tomorrow's volume of content. So I know, if you work in search or social, you're probably freaking out right now. But that's okay. I don't want you to panic, because we're going to talk about how to get around that. So the fourth problem is around strategy. And this blows my mind. only 32% of B2B content marketers have a documented content strategy. Every year when this statistic comes out, I just go crazy. I beat my head against the table and I go nuts because we are shooting ourselves in the foot by not documenting a strategy and doing research to empower our ability to create a good, effective strategy. So, don't be one of those 68% of marketers that don't have a strategy that's documented. So real quick, I want to talk about the adoption curve. So there's lots of flavors of the content marketing adoption curve out there. This is mine. Real quick, so from the right to the left, from laggards to the innovators, you can see these different sections. And the majority of us on this webinar are probably in the late majority stage or the coordinating stage, okay? Well, in the world of build it and they will come, so last decade in marketing up until about 2012 for marketing as an industry, the promotion and distribution logistics category or section of this curve was all inbound and organic traffic. So it was literally in the coordinating stage, you built it, and they came for us. They came to our content. We didn't have to worry about promotion and distribution logistics. It just happened. The search engines and social media would take care of that for us. So today that's a major problem because most of us are in the coordinating stage. We're trying to, for the most part, skip the promotion and distribution logistics stage and go right into scaling and optimization. Well, you can't do that today. We don't live in a world of build it and they will come now. You have to have a plan for promotion and distribution logistics. You have to. And for those brands and those companies, Intel IQ is the perfect example. They have a clear plan for promotion and distribution logistics, and they're executing it very well. And they are actually in the scaling and optimization stage of this right now. Okay, so here's what I want to do. I want everybody to hold up their right hand, and I want you to repeat after me. I state your name, hereby promise and swear that I will not skip the promotion and distribution logistics stage of the content marketing adoption curve. Now, what you guys don't know is that I can see all of you through your webcams right now. And I will know if you forget your promise. So don't forget your promise. So now I want to talk about research. Research is critical. Critical for you to come up with your content strategy. And strategy, keep in mind, also includes your content promotion strategy. So you should know how you're going to promote a content asset before you even create it. In fact, you should know before you even, you should know at the same time you even know what you're going to create. So whatever that topic is, you should also know, okay, this is my topic and this is where I'm promoting it and how. Okay. So we're going to go to the 20,000 foot view and work our way down on research. This is our proprietary way that we at Relevance conduct research for our clients. As a matter of fact, our clients hire us to do 60 to 90 days worth of just research in these areas. And the result of that research is a documented strategy that can be, the biggest one we ever did was like 140 pages. And basically that strategy empowered the entire company to execute content marketing at an enterprise level with plans for promotion and everything else. So let's do this. Let's peel one layer of the onion back and look at this. So there's 4 buckets to content research. Now most of us on this call do some type of research or have done some type of research. You've got these 4 buckets. Most of us have done competition research. In fact, competition research is huge in search and SEO. A lot of the SEO tools allow you to do a lot of keyword analysis and competition analysis and things like that. So a lot of us are doing that. And many content marketers are also doing some type of audience analysis, looking at the buyer's journey, right? Mapping content to it, doing lead nurturing, so on and so forth, persona development. And then many of us also look at the trends that are happening on the internet, like tools as simple as Google Trends, right? Lots of us use that. We go in and type in some phrases, and then it tells us how they're trending in the search engine. There's lots of other tools out there to explore trends as well. But where many of us fall short is this media bucket, okay? It's very, very important to understand the media's role in our particular industry. So we need to understand not just what websites are publishing content around the topics that we're publishing content on, but we need to also understand who those influencers are, who those bloggers are, who the social media influencers are in those spaces. Because truthfully, while we're all told that we need to create content for our audience, what you really want to do is to create content for your audience and the media. Because if you can do that, not only will the content resonate with the audience, but it will resonate with the media as well. And you're going to earn media, and you're also going to know where to buy sponsorships to promote your content in the media. Okay? So just because it's good for your audience doesn't mean it's good for the media and the influencers out there. You really want to get where they cross paths, where they meet, right? And if you look at the very center of this Venn diagram, we call that relevance. And that's the name of our company. If you do research in these 4 buckets at a robust level, you will have relevance. So I mentioned personas in the buyer's journey. Very, very important. The gap analysis down there, when you juxtapose your audience research with competitive research, you're going to find gaps that you need to fill, and you're going to be able to identify competitive advantages for you. And then, of course, competition, and this is a big search play, so your technical SEOs are going to look for user experience opportunities, site architecture, edits, and things like that. And then, of course, content promotion opportunities, I talked about that, and content marketing opportunities with the trends. Now, folks, I'm starting to run short on time, so I'm going to pick this up a little bit. Now, I don't generally read slides, but I'll go ahead and read this one because it's important. When you do the research that I described, you're going to have a documented strategy for content production and promotion and measurement. Okay, and this is one that we did for Belden, a company called Belden, and this guy says basically that he references this strategy, this roadmap, constantly, and he says it's all beat up and covered with sticky notes, but he also says it's the key to him communicating trends and concepts with his team and getting buy-in from key stakeholders. Okay, so having a documented strategy isn't just going to power your team from to implement and execute, but it's also going to allow you to go up the chain and get the budget that you need and the support that you need because it's all documented. You're going to know, they're going to know what the input is and what the output should be. So the last part of this is promotion. What I need to point out is this famous quote by David Ogilvy. This quote is decades old. David Ogilvy is known as the father of advertising, but he figured this out. He said that basically the less an advertisement looks like one and the more it looks like an editorial, the more readers stop, look, and read. Okay? We're content marketers, folks. We want people to read our content. We want people to consume our content. That's why we create it in the first place. So this concept here points us in the direction that we need to go for our content promotion. And these are the three ways that you can promote content: earned media, paid media, and owned media. And I can tell you, in a build it and they will come world, which we used to live in, all we did was own media content promotion or content broadcasting. And we'll talk about some of those channels. But first, let's look at earned media. When I talk about earned media for our content, specifically top of the funnel content, these are the main channels. So media relations is tried and true PR. It's been around for decades. You reach out to a journalist or an editor at a media outlet and you pitch them of a story they should write. So if you do a study in your industry and there's some revelations in that study that you think a certain journalist might want to know and cover and write about, then you'd seek that person out and you'd pitch them. Okay. You also have influencer marketing, which is super hot right now. I probably get hit up 3 times a week to co-create content or for an interview by an agency or a SaaS platform. It's just influencer marketing, and it works wonders. Then you have bylined articles. So for me, I've got my own column on the Huffington Post. So when I write for the Huffington Post, guess what I do? I cite our studies, our case studies, and our ebooks right there in the Huffington Post, and I drive HuffPo traffic over to my website. Very, very powerful. And then, of course, earned syndication. When we publish on relevance.com, a certain percentage of articles actually get syndicated to CMO.com. Now, I didn't ask them to do it. I don't pay them to do it. They just do it. So I earned that syndication, and that drives more traffic to our website. So that's all content promotion or content coverage. So now let's talk about the main topic of this webinar, and that's paid media content distribution. So the first one that I have on there is native email. Now what I mean by native email is it's termed list rental for the most part in the industry. It's where maybe I go to Byron and I say, hey Byron, I've got some extra budget. I'll give you $5,000 if you send an email out endorsing my ebook to your list. And he does that and I give him the $5,000. That's list rental. It's a huge, huge channel. I use it all the time. And then native advertising. Now, where most of this is native advertising itself, I just use native advertising in this instance to describe your content recommendation engines. Native social. So all the in-feed stuff in social media is native social. Sponsored content is an example of, the best example is the famous Orange is the New Black article that Netflix published on the New York Times. So that was a pretty famous example. But that channel's blowing up right now. People are doing sponsored content left and right. Of course, you've got your press releases and then a paid syndication relationship. So I talked about the earned syndication. This is where you would pay some website to syndicate your content. And then, of course, the last two, the tried and true, build it and they will come, publish and pray, social media and email. Now, email's great, but if you only have 100 people on your email list, it's not so great, right? And then social media, we all know that organically those the visibility is declining. So let's talk about paid media. So hopefully most of you on this webinar understand the concept behind Google's zero moment of truth. But if you're not, I'll briefly explain what this means. Procter & Gamble, prior to this study, figured out that there's these 3 steps in the buyer's journey, main steps. You've got your stimulus. So you're sitting there watching a commercial about cough syrup and you have a cough, okay? Then you go to the store and you look at all the cough syrup on the shelf and you grab one of the products and you look at it. Then you purchase the product and you use it and you have an experience with the product. Okay. Now you may do some word of mouth and tell your friends, hey, this cough syrup's awesome. Okay, and maybe that's a stimulus for someone else. But what Google found out was, in 2011 when they published this, that there's a zero moment of truth now. that the majority of the buyer's journey is done online. So they're doing research on their mobile device or on their computer for a product before they go to purchase it, before they grab it off the shelf. Very, very powerful. Now, since we understand that there's a zero moment of truth and people are out there looking for information on the internet or about our products and services, we have to look at the buyer's journey and today's paid content distribution network. Okay, so if you were to stack rank the priority of how budget is spent and time, energy, and effort is spent on the different paid media channels, this is how you would stack rank them. Now, native advertising really is your top funnel content. Now, what looks funny about this? It's upside down. The buyer's journey doesn't look like this. You see, in a world of build it and they will come, with organic and inbound traffic just happening for us, this was not a problem. Because before Zmont, as companies, as brands, we didn't produce hardly any top funnel content. We produced mid to bottom funnel content. We produced coupons. We made campaigns around sales and deals and things like that. So that's where we spent the majority of our time. Why? Because Zmont didn't exist. We held all the information. We had the power. There was no internet for people to research us on, right? So it made sense that the paid distribution networks were prioritized in that way, because our content production was prioritized that way. Well, guess what, folks? It's not happening like that anymore. Content marketing is taking over marketing. So it used to be, as companies, as brands, we hardly ever wrote articles or ebooks or guides or white papers or infographics. Why? Because we were focused on coupons and catalogs and things at the bottom of the funnel or maybe mid-funnel. That's where we spent all of our time producing content. Now, not all brands are there, but generally speaking, most of them are moving towards a content production that looks more like the buyer's journey. Okay, so we can say if you're doing content marketing, you should be close to this funnel right here. I'm calling it tomorrow's content production for a reason, because we're not all there yet. But in a world where organic visibility is waning, there's a big gap between the amount of time, energy, and effort spent at the top of the funnel on content promotion than what we're doing at the top of the funnel for content production. They are in disequilibrium today, and that's a problem. So if we move down funnel and we look at banner advertising real quick, you can see what's happening here. Banner advertising, the interest over time has declined significantly. Now, banner blindness is a real thing. It's happening, and it's happened. You're more likely to get into MIT, you're more likely to survive a plane crash, and you're more likely to finish Navy SEAL training than you are to click on a banner ad. But look at native advertising. This represents the pressure that we as content marketers feel to move towards a paid media model for our top funnel content, because banners are not a channel that we can use for our top funnel content. We simply can't, because it's built for mid to bottom funnel content. So when I say native advertising, this is what I mean. These 6 areas are how the Internet Advertising Bureau actually, how they define native advertising in these 6 areas. I don't. For me, native advertising is these 2 things: in-feed units and recommendation widgets. So in-feed units can be your sponsored post on Facebook, but it can also be the Orange is the New Black article, sponsored article in Netflix. It's all in-feed. Your native newsletter or list rental, that's in-feed. Okay, but the point is these two channels are primarily built for our top funnel content. That's what makes them native, and that's why they're important for us as top funnel content marketers. Now here's some examples of some brands that do top of the funnel content distribution. So you're likely familiar with some of these, but I want to point out two differences between these. And I really got to speed up, guys, because I'm running out of time. I want to get your questions in. So some of these brands are individual networks. So you would actually go to them and use their network to promote your content, whether it's an article or an ebook or what have you. But some of them, like Zamanta, Empowered, Kiwi, and OneSpot on this list, they're third parties. So what that means is those brands tap into multiple networks at one time. So if you work with one of those companies, and I've had the opportunity to work with each one of them, they can, at scale, use many, couple dozen native advertising networks and amplify your content. Okay, I personally prefer to work with third parties. Now, some of you that have in-house staff that can do the optimization work and so on and so forth, maybe you'll want to experiment with the individual networks. But for my resources, time, energy, and effort, it behooves me to work with the third parties. I can tell you Zamanta's gotten me pricing down to 7 cents a click on my content. And for some industries, Kiwi, I've seen them get pricing on Facebook per click less than a penny. Less than a penny. That's cheap, folks. So real quick, here's an experiment that I conducted with different native channels. You can see the 3 major social media networks and Outbrain. Now, if you look at the total spend per click, you can see it looks like Facebook was the best one. But then when you look at actual unique visitors, you can see Facebook shot up and Outbrain came out the winner on this. And you can see it didn't drive many subscribers, but it did drive some leads for us. Now, I didn't have an explicit pop-up or anything. I was looking for content amplification. But when it comes to articles, you, at scale, promoting every article that you publish, I would not recommend social media. Social media, if you have some one-off articles that you want to promote, great. Or if you have landing pages and ebooks you want to promote, perfect. Okay, but if you want to, at scale, throw out your articles, each one, you're going to want to look outside of the social channels because it becomes cost prohibitive. So when it comes to sponsored content, this is what brands were spending on average in 2013. Now that's important to note because that number is ticking up every year, and the adoption rate for media outlets for native advertising and sponsored content is shooting through the roof. And you can see why. This is what they're charging us marketers to do sponsored content. So let's talk about the takeaways and then we'll get to your questions. When I talked about the problems and trends, the 2 big ones that I can point to are simply around the amount of content that's being published on the internet. It's massively growing, and it's going to continue to grow. And you juxtapose that with the fact that content visibility is declining. Okay, that's happening in a separate silo. So that's like, that's just, I mean, one's bad enough, but when you have both of those going on, it just makes content promotion and native advertising so much more important to us. And then earned and paid media is really the gateway for you to access other more robust audiences. You don't just have to rely on search and social organically. You can use these other channels. And where that gap is in organic visibility, where inbound is kind of shrinking today, native advertising is the perfect channel to fill that gap. It's a perfect channel because it's easily scaled. On the flip side, earned media, while that's a powerful channel itself, is much more difficult to scale. But ultimately, at the end of the day, having a converged strategy that can combines earned, owned, and paid is probably the best way for you to go. And with that, folks, I got to drop the mic.
Fantastic, Chad. Really awesome. I have some questions for you, and I'm sure some other questions some more questions are going to come in. Chad, how do you decide which content is worthy of paid amplification?
Okay, great question. So there's two ways to approach it. Okay, first you have to look at your goal. So what's your goal? If my goal, you can see on this slide, did you take over the screen yet, Byron?
No, but you can leave this up if you want. I'm cool with that.
Okay, so real quick, guys, hey, just to let you know, the Native Advertising Manifesto is a book I just published like 2 weeks ago. All these are free. If you want to learn more about sponsored content, we did the world's first and only study on sponsored content. We talked to over 550 media outlets and blogs on their sponsored content programs. And then, of course, the Content Promotion Manifesto, which is slightly over a year old, looks at all channels of content promotion. So that brings me back to your question, Byron. So if I just created the Native Advertising Manifesto, and the goal of that is for lead generation, then I'm clearly going to spend some money to promote that landing page in that ebook. Unless you're producing ebooks at scale, you're probably going to spend a little bit of money on every single one of them because of your goal of lead gen, right? Now on the flip side, if I'm looking at my articles, I'm going to approach content amplification of my articles in one of two ways. I'm either going to try to scale it and promote it all, which you can do. Zamanta is a great tool for that, by the way. Well, really all those third parties are, especially Kiwi. Or I'm going to look at my highest performing articles and cherry pick those. So there's some different things and analytics you can look at. You can certainly look at social shares as a measure of, do I want to promote this or not? You can look at unique visitors. You can look at what articles drive the most leads for you and promote that. At the end of the day, I know Luke Kintai at Intel IQ, he actually has a content scorecard where he's got 3 categories of articles based on performance. So you could have 3, or you could do an F through A score if you want, like in school, and figure out what those analytics are that puts it in which category, and then you pick your categories that you want to pay to promote.
How do you begin experimenting with some of these distribution, paid distribution, vehicles, if you will, like with Kiwi, for example? Do you need to go big? What's the cost to start out? Give us some feel for budget.
Okay, so with third parties, you're generally looking at a $10K a month minimum spend. Now, they'll probably work with you a little bit. Like they worked with me, I wasn't spending that much. If you're an agency, they'll probably really work with you because they want your clients on their platform too. Okay, so basically what I do is I would talk to them and find out if your content works well on their platform. And they'll be able to tell you right away. Like Kiwi, for example, if you're not a consumer brand or publisher, you might not want to use Kiwi. And when I say publisher, I mean like the New York Times or Time Life or whatever. Okay, not my blog. So I wouldn't promote my blog using Kiwi. But if I was a consumer brand, I would. So you're going to need to talk to the third parties and figure out if your content works well on their platform. Now, if you're very budget conscious, then what you're going to need to do is focus on the individual networks. I do some due diligence, so I do your 0 moment of truth. I get on Google and start doing queries around the different platforms, find out what people think are good or bad about them. I've used Taboola, I've used Outbrain, Rev Content, AdBlade, all individual networks. But for me, I don't have the manpower to manage and optimize each one of those channels. That's why I work with third parties.
Tell us what the dashboards look like in some of these platforms, particularly the B2B platforms where most of our customers are listening in, and even writers care more about. Are you selecting the actual sites that your assets are promoted on? Is it more open-ended, or can you select industry niches? How granular can you get with who would potentially be visiting or viewing your content and clicking on it?
Right. So I know I can't speak for Outbrain, but I can speak for Taboola. So Taboola's they've gone a long way in creating a product that allows not just the advertiser but the publisher as well to be very picky on what they publish, because I'm sure you've all seen some of the clickbait stuff out there, right? Well, there's a lot of complaints from real content marketers out there around that, and their dashboards are set up in a way so that you can deny publications and publications can deny your content. But generally speaking, the dashboard is going to, so let me step back. The way I've done it in the past is I'm scaling amplification for all my articles. So I'm actually plugging in an RSS feed. So, and I put my parameters around the, in air quotes, ad unit, because I don't know what else to call it. And then in a turnkey fashion, it will auto post that stuff off of that RSS feed. Now, if you're just promoting, say, ebooks, for example, you actually build out that, in air quotes, ad unit with your graphic and your headline and all that other good stuff. And then, of course, there's an analytics dashboard where you can monitor spend and performance.
I have a poll running, Chad, so people can chime into that. I'm going to close it in just a couple minutes, but while I leave that open for another 30 seconds or a minute, how do you compare your native ad buys, and how many are you running at the same time? Because you seem like a normal guy, like most of us. Like you might have a $1,000 to $10,000 budget for, let's call it PPC. How are you comparing those investments? Do you know granularly where the promotions are being displayed? Can you literally turn on and turn off different publishers that might be picking them up from your third party? How much control do you have? Like as much as, say, a Google pay-per-click ad, or controlling and throttling up the spend per day and audience participation? Give us a feel for comparison with different channels.
So it's pretty granular. It's not quite as granular as like AdWords with Google, but it is pretty granular. So for me, like I said, I worked with third parties mostly. So I would give my KPIs to them, and they would manage the day-to-day. Let's move some money here. Let's move some money here. Let's turn this one off, turn this one on, because I was tapping into up to 24 different networks at one time through Zemanta, and they were managing that for me. But yeah, I mean, think of it as almost like PPC, except this is more top funnel content. So you're going to have a lot of that same functionality. So you can adjust it as often and as frequently as you want.
David had a question for you, and it was, if you had a media budget of $5K, how would you approach testing and optimization of the content promotion?
If I had $5K, so if I had $5K, I would actually do a list rental first. So I would take my ebook and I would find some publication out there that is relevant to my audience, that my audience reads, and I would say, hey, listen, I got $5K a budget. I just did this ebook. I think it's fantastic. I think your audience would love it. I will pay you if you endorse this ebook to your audience via email and link to my landing page. I've been able to incrementally from one email blast in 24 hours drive 800 one time, 800 top of the funnel inquiries or top of the funnel leads, conversions, by doing list rental. That's where I'd start.
Let me throw some good challenges with you on your answer to that question. So you're making some assumptions that For your own business, you know that your book to the right target audience would lead X number of leads, and those X number of leads would probably convert at a pace of, 5%, let's just say. You then, conversion in your mind would mean a sale of X, which would exceed the price of purchasing that list, obviously. You'd be looking for a break-even or better situation. Is that the right approach to all of this? And here's where you run into real snags and real problems, Chad. Let's say you're Writer Access, and someone can sign up at Writer Access and buy content for $3, $5, like they're getting a free trial of Writer Access. Right. It gets difficult to see, or someone can sign up and purchase 1,000 articles a month, which we have happen here, right? So, these are radical extremes. How do you begin balancing that decision on where to spend your $5,000? Say you're Writer Access, and you know that there's certainly an average spend involved on a per customer basis. But my point is, does it come down to math? Does the decision on where you're going to spend your money and whether you're going to buy a list or whether you're going to, does it come down to user acquisition cost and a deep science customized for each company in your mind with native advertising?
Yeah, so that's how I do it. So I've got a giant spreadsheet where I look at every, in air quotes, channel, okay? Not just paid, also earned as well. So I do a lot of public speaking, and generally I either get paid to do it or they'll cover my costs, and I'll fly out to a conference, right? And I always leave with generally 100 or more new, in air quotes, leads. So that's a line item. That conference is a line item in my spreadsheet, and I know exactly how much money I spent and how many raw inquiries I got from that, how many qualified inquiries I got from that, or MQLs, and I know what my percentage is from MQL to SQL to opportunity to close one. And I track all the way from the top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel to close one, close lost, or closed other. So I know what the percentage breakdowns are, and then I look at a cost per. So in our industry, I can tell you, Byron, that a top of the funnel inquiry, just a raw inquiry of somebody filling out and downloading an ebook, on average in our industry, it costs $32 to produce one of those. Okay, if any of my channels...
That's a user acquisition cost? That's a user acquisition cost.
At the top of the funnel. That's like first touch conversion, right? Where you have their name and email address. So that's $32. If any of my channels performs less than that, I know it's a good channel.
Mm-hmm. So your baseline, you're basing decisions off, quote, like a new third party that you're going to try out. You're looking at pure math on user acquisition costs. What if there's a delay on the user acquisition costs? Like, let me give you an example. We'll go to a trade show, like we were at Traffic and Conversion out in San Diego. We brought back 400 or 500 leads, but we don't understand whether those people are going to buy from us until like 3 months later, right?
Right.
So that's a classic example of a date. Bottom line is attribution is frigging really hard.
Yeah, it is.
Especially multi-channel distribution, and that's a real pain point when it comes to even concepts like remarketing. Google's brilliance of following people's IP addresses around and showing them repeated ads on a remarketing level, brilliant, but hard to get attribution. Hard to say, are they finally going to sign up for a content marketing conference because we're just bombarding them with so many different variations of ad? They just get to the pain point and say, all right, I better do this. Well, they didn't actually click on the banner ad that they saw for remarketing. They just went back to the site in their own normal way. And that screws us up. Wouldn't you agree with that? And how do you handle that? How do you handle that with native advertising?
So while I do micromanage my attribution, like I have somebody, it's his full-time job. Now he micromanages more as it gets further down the funnel, okay? Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily micromanage the top of the funnel. I think that's very, 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 very difficult. My analytics track everything from a first touch attribution So first touch to conversion. So if you come to my website through search and then a year later come through a retargeted ad and then download something, search is going to get credit for that. Now that's not correct. We know there's multiple touches, but that's the best my analytics will give me. So search would get credit at that point, because that's how my analytics is set up. Now you can use Google Analytics and set up all types of multi-touch attribution scenarios. We actually did a giant study that's on our website on attribution. And I can tell you that the vast majority of attribution chains, there's searches in there several times. And that really is what makes up someone's ZMOT, the zero moment of truth. And then where your retargeting comes in is going to try to basically spark the flame of someone's ZMOT. So maybe they were in their ZMOT and then they left their ZMOT. Well, you're trying to get them with that retargeting to go back to their ZMOT, to be to be that point where that happens. But yeah, attribution's tough.
Hey, I want to get a quick question for Jan. You mentioned trend tools. Do you have any other suggestions for trend tools that you use? I think you might have used Google Trends.
Yes.
Any other trend tools for Jan?
Yeah, so definitely Google Trends. Most of the enterprise SEO suites are going to have some type of trend analysis where they're going to give you information around keywords. So your Bright Edges of the world, SEO Clarity, there's some other ones I'm not even thinking of right now, but most of those tools will do it. You can also look at, there's a tool we've used, Experian Hitwise. That basically what they do is they track 10% of every click and page view on the internet in the United States and the UK from the ISP level. So they're going to be able to give you data points and trends and personas that, I mean, it'll blow your mind, the information that's in that tool. I was freaked out when I first saw it.
And I would throw in BuzzSumo to that as well, if you want to look at, surfacing, hot content that's surfacing and is trending. BuzzSumo. And by the way, I did a webinar with the CEO of BuzzSumo.
I love BuzzSumo.
Totally. Yeah. Well, there's a great recording that he did. David had another question, and by the way, Kate thanks you for your service, by the way, and that was a lovely comment. Kate, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
David had another question, and that was, would your top-of-the-funnel approach to content promotion be different if you offered, say, first-time free or first-time trial of a SaaS model, I'm going to assume?
Gotcha. So that wouldn't be top funnel. That's going to be mid to bottom funnel. So that's like the step that someone does before they buy your product, okay? So here's what I'll say. I'd experiment with native advertising for that particular mid to bottom funnel content, but you're probably going to get better bang for your buck doing sponsorships, and traditional advertorial things, as well as PPC and display, is where I think, in retargeting, that's where your free trial is going to probably get the best return.
Yeah, and to me, honestly, there's the line in the sand. I mean, native advertising works best, as you point out, when you're pushing out informational content that people want and need, right? Not a bunch of free trials and free offers. That's the antithesis. You cannot be successful with native advertising, with your David Ogilvy, insight there. If you're trying to push product, it just doesn't work. You're wasting your money.
Yeah, and there's channels for that. It's just native isn't. Yeah. Primary.
Native is not one of them. Well, let's get some poll results here. So 54%. So the question, of course, again, was what percentage of your time, energy, and effort and budget do you currently spend on content promotion? 54%. Well, let me ask you this. Chad, can you answer that question for us, independent of these answers? Because, you're an expert at this stuff. What percentage of your day do you have to spend worrying and thinking about your native advertising spend?
So, and it's not just spend, it's time, energy, and effort as well. But it's,
and creating
60%.
the content assets, 60%. Wow.
Yeah, so here's the thing. If you go to Relevance and look, we don't hardly produce any of our own content. We have over 300 individual contributors that write content for us on a regular basis.
Wow.
And they're producing the content. We're just coordinating that content.
Yeah. Interesting. Yep, you figured it out, my friend. Well, let's look at some of the answers. 54% less than 15%.
Wow.
25%, 15% to 35%. 13% 35 to 50%, and only 8% more than 50%. You were in a minority.
Yeah.
Chad.
But
that's the whole point of this presentation. That's the whole point. It would be interesting to break that down from a budget perspective. I think that where we would find that people are not only spending not a lot of time on this, but they're not spending a lot of budget on this. And what's your quick take on some of the newer and more interesting channels? Facebook has done some radically interesting new things with native. Just if we have just one more minute, let's say, what's your take on how you're using Facebook? How has that changed in the last few months?
Yeah, so for me, if I'm doing Facebook to promote something, I'm promoting an ebook, right? I haven't had an article that I've wanted to promote on Facebook for a while, but about once a year, twice a year, I'll do some type of heavy hitter thought leader piece that I spend like days on. That asset I would promote on Facebook. But what I'm most excited to see in Facebook is their instant articles. Instant articles. That's what they call it. So Facebook is now opened up and I've got an article bookmarked that I'm supposed to read to figure out how to do it. But we as content marketers can actually go into Facebook and publish content directly in Facebook. Now, and publishers are doing it too, and bloggers and all kinds of people are starting to do it. I'm excited to experiment with that in Facebook. That's their latest and greatest thing that I want to play with.
How about LinkedIn? They opened up the vault over there for sponsored content. They went out and hired like hundreds of sales reps to call on even SMBs to mid-sized companies. They originally started out with a $10,000 minimum requirement, and that budget could last as long as you want. The click prices seem to be like 50 cents each per click. They seem like they're expensive, and they have to be. They sort of follow the content.ad model, which is interesting in itself, where you have to have an informational page that you're linking to. It has to be informational content that you're promoting on LinkedIn, and it's got to be an informational page. You cannot sell a free trial. You cannot sell product. It's got to be an informational play. But my inside tracks tell me that they made like something like $50 million in like a 6-month time period taking this out of it was like an astronomical amount of money that they made from people about 6 months to a year ago that after launching this. It's been monstrously successful. What's your take on LinkedIn? Have you experimented with that, with sponsored ads at LinkedIn? Have you found it to be successful?
So the short answer is yes, I have experimented. But with my experiment, based on the goals, it was not successful because what I was trying to do was amplify my content at scale. Where I do find success on LinkedIn is promoting things like ebooks and case studies and things like that. So here's a strategy you can do. You can, if you have a case study of some work that you did for, I don't know, let's just say Kmart, and then you have this case study with Kmart on the title, you can then turn around and target the specific marketing folks at Target on LinkedIn so that they see that their competitor, there's this case study, they're probably going to download it because they want to know what Kmart's up to. So they can outperform them. So when it comes to targeting in a B2B space particularly, LinkedIn is amazing. Now, one other thing that I've done on LinkedIn is before I was with Relevance, I was with a smaller agency, and I did a targeted campaign for plastic surgeons on LinkedIn. And because that's such a niche group, I was getting my leads and my cost per at the top of the funnel might have been, it was less than 50 cents per conversion. I mean, I was hardly paying anything for that traffic in those conversions. So when it comes to targeting very specific companies and roles in companies with actual converting content, I think LinkedIn is killer. But it becomes cost prohibitive when you try to use it to scale content promotion of articles.
Chad, we've been thanks everyone for staying a little bit extra here. I hope you've enjoyed this as much as I have. And Chad, I want to thank you for being with us today.
Oh, it was my pleasure, Byron. Appreciate it. And can't wait to see you out in Vegas.
Yes, indeed. Content Marketing Conference, everyone. That's our next stop, at least with Chad and I. Thanks for tuning in. Hope your day's a little smarter, better, faster, and wiser thanks to this webinar. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We'll see you next week, next month,
Right on.
rather. Right on.